Get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready for love. Get ready for love. Get ready for love. Get ready for love. Get ready. Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome back to Live with the Ladies.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
We've been, we've been missing in action for a couple of weeks, but we're back today. And today we'll be talking or discussing domestic violence. As you can see, one of our partners in crime is missing, Michelle. She'll be out for this evening, but my beautiful, illustrious co-host, Dion, is here with me to help us chop it up and talk about DV. So before we actually get into it with the clip, um, welcome, Dion.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. We waiting for a few more people to get in the live before we get started. We only have about 2 people in there. I'm gonna share some, but it's good to see you guys. I'm glad to be back. We took a little hiatus for a minute, but we're back. We missing our co-host, but we'll hold it down till she get back.
Right.
Till she get back. I'm gonna share it out a little bit. Wait a few minutes before we get started, sis, because you know.
Right. That's right. I forgot that. Please don't forget to like and share. Again, Facebook has cut extremely how you're able to go live from another platform. So unlike before, when I could just put it into the ladies' room automatically, it doesn't go that way. I have to actually share it in the ladies' room and share it with or tag other people. So it really does help us a lot if you could share it along as well. I'd appreciate that so we get a full house for our very important discussion on domestic violence. Um,
Yes.
Dion, before we do the clip, you want to go over some of the statistics, or would you like to go over some of the statistics after the clip?
We'll do it after the clip. By then we should have a few more people. Right now we got a total of 4. But we could start with our clip because the show must go on. People probably go in and watch it later, so we can keep going.
Okay, so then to set up our clip, I just wanted to talk about how some people are framing domestic violence and making domestic violence a racial issue, or making domestic violence a responsibility issue for the victim. And we're here, or at least I wanted to definitely show you that clip so that we could dispel that for you tonight. So if you didn't hear this clip earlier with Dr. Umar Johnson, which sometimes he has a few good tidbits of knowledge that he throws out every now and then, but he also every now and then sticks his foot in his mouth, and he is one of the instances where his foot is all the way in his mouth, and he's gonna really need a good surgeon to get it out, especially for someone who's supposed to be practicing mental health or a mental health practitioner.
When you heard your son beating his girlfriend up upstairs, did you call the police? When you heard your nephew,
I'm sorry,
you choking out his girlfriend last week?
That was the wrong clip. Sorry, here's the right clip.
Ask her this stuff, Sister Cassie. And I don't know if she identifies as black. She definitely bunny hopping right now. But this is what I would ask her. Was this about justice, or was this about money? Because when you were with Puffy, because he's Sean Puffy Combs, you could have picked up the phone and called any criminal defense lawyer in America. and told them I'm Sean Puffy Combs' lover and I am afraid of my life because he is abusing me on a regular basis. Do you know how many lawyers would have jumped at an opportunity to not only put him behind bars, but also get her a payday? She could have got justice immediately when it was happening. So if I was talking to my sister Cassie, is this about justice or is this about money? Because if this is about justice and protecting sisters from domestic abuse, why didn't you run him to the police when you were still with Puffy? Why are we just now hearing about this 8 years later? Why did you wait until you married a white man and then came back to get the black man's money? Is it justice or is it extortion? If I were talking to Cassie, I would ask her this stuff.
Okay, so look,
Yeah.
enough of that.
Right. Wow. Wow. That was something
That was
actually.
something. And I'm just gonna say that I watched the other clip is more of an entirety of what he was saying. And what really, really, really aggravated me or pissed me off about what he said and how he presented that was because he is a mental health professional. And a mental health professional ought to know how domestic abuse affects people and how it affects people differently.
Mhm.
And that a person who is being abused should not be held as the scapegoat to fixing their abusive situation all the time.
Mhm.
She's not responsible for him beating her, and nor should she be responsible at that time, or would have thought at that time that it was her responsibility to take care of other abused people.
Exactly right.
So I don't know why he would even say such a thing. That kind of aggravated me that he would um, go there knowing that he's a mental health professional. And then the other part of it is that he's making it an issue of black and white. When people who are abused, whether you're black, white, whatever you are not responsible for being abused. And the fact that he would say that it was all about money, she could have got more money then when it happened than the settlement that she got now, I'm sure. So I mean his comment was like way, way, way off base. It kind of angered me because I'm really of this notion when people first started talking about this case with Puffy and Cassie, I felt like they were making it too much about them and not about the domestic abuse, period. That when we talk about domestic abuse a lot of times in this country, it's always framed around who is being abused.
That's right.
But the abuse itself and how do we stop the abuse? So with that said, I'll relinquish.
Right. And what bothered me too on there is how many times have we heard when people are abused, be it men or women, it's just people being abused, you are afraid of your abuser. People stay in it for years and
Right.
not tell a soul. So just because he's rich, what is the difference in her being afraid if he's rich or if he was poor? It doesn't matter because your fear is there now. It doesn't matter the money. And so he made it more about she wanting a payday versus maybe she felt, now is the time to do it. Now I feel comfortable. Now I feel safe. Because she could have did it soon as she got married, but she didn't, right? So he's making it more so, chasing a black man for $1 versus that this person was clearly abused. So I really, I listen to him and sometimes he has good points on some things. I do. But this one, he was way off. I just was not. That is unbelievable. I didn't hear that one. It's the first time I heard it. But there was so many different things, like you were saying to me earlier. So many different things about them particular. I mean, what it did do is open our eyes a little wider to something that we already know is here, right? We already know millions of people are abused. But this made us really talk a little bit more about it
Right.
than we have been. So if you want, I could go. It says a couple of statistics that I got was 24 people in 1 minute. 1 minute, 24 people is abused in 1 minute, physically abused in 1 minute. It says 10 million women and men in 1 year. And this is only the ones that's reported.
Right.
10 million is a huge number of being reported. Imagine all the ones that's not reported. It says 1 in 4 women are abused, be it slapping, pushing, whatever, shoving, and 1 in 10 men. We're not definitely not making this about women, men, and only abusing women. It goes both ways.
Right.
And then one other statistic, and I'll leave the rest for later. One other statistic said the hotlines, 20,000 calls in 1 day in the United States on DV's hotlines. Is an astronomical amount of calls. And again, I'm going to say, how many are not being called? If they are tallying up 20,000, imagine the ones that is not being called. So this here, what we're dealing with right here, which is nothing new under the sun, to me, it might even be getting worse.
Well, I think COVID did play a big role in domestic abuse rising, because people were out of work and they were spending more time together, and they had time to go through the stages of abuse when they're together. You know, the stages of abuse where there's the I should have had that all written down because I don't remember like I used to, but there's a natural stage to abuse where it inclines, it starts to trend towards the abuse then happens. Then after the abuse, there's the honeymoon period. It goes back again through an incline. Then there's a cycle of abuse that happens.
That's right.
That I believe probably intensified during COVID because we were stuck together. People were losing their jobs. Again, the poverty aspect of domestic abuse always plays a big role as well. Power dynamics in domestic abuse play a big role, which is why I just couldn't understand for the life of me why he would believe that this woman felt like she had power to call somebody while she was in the abuse. Right. A powerful man. I mean, he obviously had bigger power than we even thought. Now that we know power was
that's
other charges, right? With the trafficking and all of that stuff that he's alleged to be involved in. So of course she wouldn't feel safe then. Now that she's away from it and has been away from it for some time, she would feel more safe, and she probably feels more safe now that she's with someone else. So, I mean, I don't know where that off the wall comment was, but there are a few comments in the chat. If you could read some of them.
Yes. Yolanda is saying people don't want to often relive the abuse by talking about it. They don't feel safe. Exactly right. I mean, come on. You asking somebody to bring up something that's detrimental to their life. They may think that they may come back and kill them. You know, I'm sure. You know how many people say if you say something, I'm gonna kill you and your family. Right. And they believe it. I mean, they see how they beating me, right? She also said it may take time, even years, to bring it to light, like we just said, of course. Sometimes people don't tell anyone ever.
Because that's a big component of abuse. Abusers will often get you isolated away from your family and your friends, and you don't have anybody to go to but them.
That's
So
right.
that's a big part of abuse. So
And
yes.
then a lot of times people feel embarrassed. They don't, they don't feel safe. They feel scared. They're in living in fear. They feel embarrassed. They don't want to tell anybody. So it is, I'm sure it's so many women and men living that life as we speak about it, right? Anytime you saying it's 24 people a minute
Mhm.
that's being abused,
Mhm.
that is a big number. That
Right.
is a big number. Yolanda also said that they often blame themselves.
Oh, that's a big one too. Guilt.
Yes, guilt and shame.
Guilt.
Something that, mhm.
And people who have children, if they leave the relationship, they don't know what to do with their children. And who's going to take the children? There's so many levels and layers to domestic abuse that you can't
Oh,
just pinpoint one thing or another. They
that's right.
all, they are all compiled together to make it almost easy for the abuser.
That's
So,
right.
and that's why you find you have cases like uh Cassie and Puffy, where sometimes you think it's easy for somebody to get out, but you don't know their real situation. You
That's
don't
right.
know what he told her about her family, that he might have her family snuffed out. You don't know. So you can't ever blame the abused.
And they said that I forgot how many pages in her report there was. Like they couldn't even read them all. I
Wow.
mean, it was so many things that she put down on that paper of what she endured for all of those years. And it wasn't like 1 or 2 years.
Right.
It was years of that. And a lot of women, I've seen it, even in family, right? You don't want to really talk about it, but I've seen it in my own family, like with my own eyes, watching a man be upset again over money, right? Over money because he not holding up his end of the bargain as the man of the family, and he's not holding it up. She asking him, this got to be paid or we won't have this. Instead of him trying to go out there, get another job or get a side hustle, he hitting her as if it's her fault that he don't have the money because his pride is hurt to provide for his family. So he abused her in front of children.
Wow.
And so as children watching that, right, you thinking this is, whoa, wait, this it? Like,
Is
is
this
this what is this right? And then you wonder why it's generation after generation, because you see it and nobody says, you know what, come back to the kids and say, that was wrong. Nobody came back to us, those that saw it and witnessed it. No one ever came back and said, you know what you saw was wrong.
Mhm.
You're never supposed to do that.
That is another statistic, that most people who abuse come from homes where there was abuse.
And,
So
yeah,
that's another, like, look out for. As a matter of fact, I always like to talk about ways in which women can be proactive or even help themselves. And in the beginning of a relationship, during the courtship, those are some of the things that you might want to look out for. Ask people, what are their backgrounds? What kind of home did they come from? What kind of relationships they have with their family? And when you start dating, do you feel like you're being isolated or pulled away from your friends and your family? Because those are all telltale signs that someone is abusive. And even on the first shout, or the first we don't even want to get to the hitting part or the physical part, but the first the first incidents of verbal abuse or emotional abuse. Those are things that you kind of want to pay attention to, because in a relationship, they most likely get worse before they'll get better. So, again, we have the number streaming on the bottom of our screen.
That's right.
The National Domestic Hotline. If you feel like you've been abused, or someone in your family, or you're in an abusive relationship, please reach out to that number. I'm sure that you'll be able to get some great resources, or even places to go if you need to, because there are safe houses for people who are in abusive relationships where they will take you to. But you have to be really, really ready to go. You cannot straddle a fence on that, because you would only put yourself and other families or other women at risk if they take you somewhere and then you allow yourself to be
That's right.
brought back in by your abuser, because you'd be surprised some of the things that abusers will do and the lengths they'll go to get to you. So,
That's right. They'll do it all. And we most of it we're talking about a lot of physical abuse, but I also want to touch on the fact that verbal and emotional abuse is just as bad.
right.
If someone is, talking down to you, verbally cursing you out day in and day out, telling you who you are and who you're not, and they constantly doing that. I'm not saying one is worse than the other. I'm saying, to me, they neck and neck.
Right.
Because those are long-term effects as well, even if they never touched you.
Right.
So again, like you said, a lot of those are telltale sign, red, as they call it now, red flags. Especially my biggest red flag is if they're really controlling, right? They gotta know every move. They're very uncomfortable with you doing this or you doing that, or you're with this person. Those are definitely telltale signs for me. You are too controlling, and then when you can't control, that's where the abuse start coming in.
Right. Right.
So those are the things of financial abuse as well. Yolanda said, absolutely,
Yes.
all go together. That really does, because financial abuse is terrible as well. I mean, it's almost like they got you as a slave, right? To doing those things. And me and Nikki was just talking about it earlier. And unfortunately, I believe, and Nikki agrees, that a lot of this stems from slavery. People want to be superior. All of that, like they want to be in charge. They feel like and it could be they don't feel big, like a big person when they in the world. So when they come home, they want to I don't know what they want to be.
They want to exert their control.
Right.
When they can't get it out in the world, they come home and feel like this is the only space that I can. And so sometimes that's what happens. But it's all just, even the whole mentality around abuse and hitting, that is a concept that we kind of got as being enslaved or colonized people, because that's not our natural way to solve a problem, is through abuse. These are things that we've learned as a method of controlling people, because that's how we were controlled as enslaved people. So, but they say you learn from your forefathers, and that's what we learn, is how to control people through abuse.
That's exactly right. And it is constantly going on, generation after generation. And unfortunately, no one is saying, this, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because I believe the people that sit by and watch it, you're just as guilty. right? You're sitting there watching this happen, and so many people know of someone maybe getting abused, but they can't say anything because the person is telling them not to say anything. That's a tricky situation to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes
Woo.
there are people who are just like anybody who works in the school system or doctors, police officers, social workers. We are what you would consider mandatory reporters, so that if you see it, you have to
Wow.
get your license or your livelihood if you do not report. So
Uh-huh.
you do have to report as a mandatory reporter. But I think that it gets a little scary a lot of times with people who are just bystanders, whether they're family, neighbors, or just friends, because you're afraid because you don't know that by your getting involved, would that put you in danger, or would it even make the brutalization worse
I'm the person.
for the person? So it's always a scary and tricky situation, especially when, and I'm not trying to blame the victim, but this happens a lot, is that you'll have somebody who will try to either report or support you or stand up on your behalf. And instead of you taking that advice or doing what's needed to be done, you wind up siding with the abuser. And then it'll be like, you know how it is, even just like it happens in relationships. You might have a friend that's going through something with the boyfriend. The friend
That's
get
right.
mad at the boyfriend and they not speaking to the boyfriend, and the girlfriend go right back along with the boyfriend, and then they out in you. So
That's right.
sometimes it's a little tricky, you don't know where to go. But the only thing that I could say is, you do your best. If you know something is going on, you do your best to try and help the person. So what I like to do, well, aside from, if I'm working or even if I'm not working, but as a mandatory report, I have to report. That's just that when I'm working. But as somebody who just witnessing, what I try to do is I will get the victim alone and just get in their ear and just be like, "You okay, sis? Or you okay, brother?" Because don't forget, it happens to men as well as women.
That's right.
Well, you okay? If you need anything, let me know. This is just between us. I'm not going to share this information. Whatever you tell me is between me and you. Whatever I can do to help you, if you need assistance, you need me to send a wellness check officer, just let me know. And sometimes you could break the ice that way. Sometimes people won't divulge. They're not going to open up. They're not going to tell you regardless, but you have to at least try, because really domestic violence is so serious that if a person sustains domestic violence for a long period of time and they don't get out, the chances are that their out would be death.
Yep.
So a lot of times people don't realize that, because domestic violence is so insidious that if a person is used to beating on you, you know, you don't know what this is doing to your body internally. But any kind of accident could happen. They could hit you too hard one day and you hit your head or you fall out.
That's right.
Anything could happen. Or they could just advance to the point where they're angry enough to just be violent, because some abusers are so controlling. They'd rather see you dead than to see you out in the world doing anything with anybody.
That's right.
You have to be very careful.
Yolanda said oftentimes the victim returns to the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
They do.
We do. Some of them really is so used to the abuse, they don't know how to live in a world without it, and
It's true.
they really need therapy, really bad. And when I was doing my little research, it also states that majority of the women, guess what? The age is 18 to 24.
24.
that's babies, right?
Yeah.
That's babies being abused at that young age. And I want to say, so you figure as women is the main one at this in this statistic from 18 to 24 with from their intimate partner, right? So I want to say to myself, I'm thinking like, okay, so make their boyfriend or significant other, girlfriend, whatever it is around about the same age.
Sometimes.
So yes, sometimes. Right. Exactly. And I'm saying, so these young, again, I believe you see it, you repeat it, and or you have that syndrome of you want to be superior.
Mhm.
Um, but it's a sad affair at this age, right? 18 to 24.
Mhm.
It's a sad thing.
Very young. Um, I think what also makes it even sadder is that a lot of times when people don't get help, if the abused person fortunately gets out, the abuser goes on to the next victim because they know how to spot someone who would be easily victimized.
That's right. They
It's
know how to get them.
They know exactly what kind of personality that they're looking for. And it's unfortunate, but if they don't get help, it just becomes another vicious cycle with another person, woman or man.
That's right. It just repeat itself over and over again. Over and over again. I looked up the states, right? I looked up the 10 highest states in US of where's the highest rate of domestic violence, and number one state was Oklahoma.
Wow.
Oklahoma coming in after Oklahoma was Kentucky, then Nevada, Alaska. That one shocked me a little bit. Alaska, Arizona, Indiana, South Carolina, and then Missouri.
Mhm.
These are the top 10 states with the highest domestic violence. That's reported. Let's
Mhm.
let's be clear about that because a lot of it ain't reported.
Right.
But a lot of these states, they do have high poverty in those in those states. And I, like we were talking about earlier, I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
I also believe that high poverty has a lot to do with reporting because when people are impoverished, for some reason they wind up being able to report, or they're able to report, or not. Let me not say able. It's easier to spot them as opposed so that they can be reported than it is for someone who is more wealthy because you can hide abuse when you're wealthy. So those are kind of some of the reasons why you probably have higher reports of higher incidents of reporting is because it's easier to spot abuse with people who are impoverished as opposed to people who have wealth. It's easier to hide. It's easier to hide, and people who are wealthy are also. I think not that it's the abuse is more, but it's a bigger stake for them to get out. They have more to risk to get out than people who are impoverished. So, imagine that you're wealthy and you live in a lifestyle of wealth and you're being abused. And, if you walk away from this abuser, you have to give all of that up. You know,
Uh-huh.
some women and men don't have the kind of esteem that they need or the kind of agency that they need to walk away from that lifestyle and just start all over on their own.
That's right. That's right. Because I mean, they're gonna lose a lot. They're gonna lose their whole lifestyle, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's either that, or sometimes you're gonna lose your life.
On your life.
um, But I think that a lot of that with the ones with the money really go unnoticed, as you said. It really goes unnoticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because no one really looks at the rich,
Right.
if they can't be abusers as well. But it does happen more so in our more impoverished communities than it is in that. And I don't know, is it because there's not being reported?
Mhm.
I don't know. But we know. Angela says she didn't get a notification that we were on, so she says she's gonna watch the replay. Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Thank you. Sorry about
I
that.
just sent her one. I thought I did. I guess I didn't. Maybe I didn't see
Sorry
it.
about that. So a lot of people we didn't, advertise as a lot go around, but it's okay. People can always go back and watch it because people do it all the time. Also in my statistics, they were saying that in the United States that Black people are the most likely. This is from a 2023 report, most likely to be abused, followed by Hispanic and then white.
Mhm.
And that's in the United States. But
So that was the other part of the video that I did kind of want to address with Dr. Umar when he was, if you watch the video in its entirety, he spoke about how domestic violence is higher at a higher rate in Black communities than any other, and that in his mind he felt like we really weren't doing enough about it, that we were allowing it to fester in our communities, which again is playing victim blaming. So in my mind, it's like victim blaming because our communities are suffering the worst. So you're blaming the community for something that we're suffering from.
that's right.
When in all actuality, in my mind, like we talked about earlier, a lot of what we suffer from as African Americans in this country is trickle down effects of enslavement. That's why I always talk about post traumatic slave syndrome whenever I get a chance.
That's right. I
To me,
believe
it's the most comprehensive evaluation and study about our behaviors today, because everything it's almost, to me, almost everything could be linked to the enslavement of Black people and how we behave today, how how we suffer at higher rates of most things, illness, domestic violence, crime, all of these things, housing shortage, all of these things affect us at higher rates and more insidiously than it affects other communities because of what we've gone through as enslaved people. Oh boy, sorry, that was somebody coming in my door.
that's all right. And yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier. I believe that. Like I really believe that all of that trickles down onto what we deal with every day.
Right, and he has to know that. And if he knows that,
Right.
why are you blaming the victim? It's like,
You blaming
yes,
the
we have a
victim.
responsibility to do something for ourselves, but instead of you blaming us, how about you get in and talk about ways in which we could fortify ourselves against those kind of statistics? Because there are ways that we can fortify ourselves against things like domestic violence. And one part of it is, and here's another, not to male bash, but it seems like we always get to this point. But I feel like in some ways, Black men are not holding up their bargain. Their end of the bargain. How many Black men, I know that they are a great number, but not enough, are being mentors to men who might need somebody to guide them away from those feelings of control?
Yeah.
How men talk to other men and help them to get their issues of control under control.
Right.
And I'm saying that because I know a lot of men do it, but I just believe that they have a greater responsibility to do it because they know how much is lacking in the way of Black male leadership in our communities, as opposed to the women are doing it. How many women, just the sororities alone,
Right.
that mentor
Women
young women.
women empowerment groups,
Right.
just a lot of different things.
Exactly. I just think women in general, like when I think about my just in the projects, growing up, going to the projects, the women that were in that projects that would stop you when they saw you going the wrong path, or that would just give you that guiding hand. So many of those women, and I could name a ton of those women. And I just wonder if men are doing that for men the way women did. I see that women have poured into my life. That's why I love women, because they've always poured into my life to help me navigate.
That's right.
And I don't see that with men. I just don't see it. Maybe it is, and I just didn't see it, and I don't know, but I don't see the.
I mean, we had that back in the day. I don't know if they still have it, Big Brother, and things like that. Whereas they, would mentor young men. I know they had an organization. I don't know if it was TAG, where they would talk to young, because in the statistics, again, it's mostly women from 18 to 24 that's being abused, where they had an organization where they would talk to the youth of that age bracket, right, and get them together and have conversations about it, because that's where it all starts from.
Yeah, I think Tay did have that.
Yeah.
She did at one time.
Yeah, her and Keish, Keish,
Yes.
to have that, and I thought that was phenomenal, because it is that age bracket where it begins. That's what the statistics say.
There's also another one in Montclair. This young lady, Cynthia Walker. She has a very active domestic violence group out of Montclair called Sophia. And they do a lot of work. In fact, they have a annual walk that they do in October.
Oh, wow.
They'll be having one again this October or September, something like that. I know that I think they do it the walk in September and candlelight visual in October. But they also have other resources, like I know they have a lending closet where women who are getting back on their feet can get materials that they need to furnish their house.
Oh, wow.
They have a lot. They do a lot. I'll have to find her number, the number for their organization or their link, and attach it to the actual video when I get a moment.
That would be great. That would be absolutely great. But I think, it all, again, it stems from home, even the story that I was telling you, right? And thank God for aunts, my aunties and my grandma, and things like that, to tell me that's not how someone is supposed to treat you. And so in watching that, and then if young men are watching that, young boys are watching that, including my brother at the time, and watching that and not realizing that this is really not what you're supposed to be doing, you grow up and do the same thing.
Right.
And that's what's the very unfortunate part.
Yep. What's the saying? When you know better, you do better. But whatever you do learn, my mind, especially this time of night, I'm getting
right.
But there was a poem called "Children Learn What They Live." That's the poem. I don't have it in front of me, but when you get a chance, look it up. But
Mhm.
it talks about how kids learn what they live. And if you come from a home filled with violence and rage, you're
Yes,
producing children with violence who are violent and will be rageful. And they'll visit that upon their families.
that's right. And it just keeps going and going and going, unfortunately, to the next generation and so forth.
Yep.
And again, I just believe that a lot of people, unfortunately, walk around with anger. They're just very angry. It could be for just for nothing. They just walk. They're just mad. They're just angry and mad at everything and everyone. A lot of people walk around like that into all the way up into adulthood, and and then they get bitter as they get older. Um, it's a sad affair, but you see it every day.
Yeah. And social media don't make it any better. I'm sorry, social. We talked about that on our last live, but social media, boy, it could be good, but it could be bad. But so
Telling you.
yeah, social media don't make it any better. And again, before we go off anymore, I wanted to repeat: if you're watching this and you are experiencing any form of domestic violence, be it physical, mental, sexual, emotional, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE 7233. So
Please
make,
do.
make sure
Please do.
that when we come on that we're giving you, even if it's just that one tool, something to
Anything.
take
Just
away from here.
right. Right. Because where do we begin to help it is what are we doing, right? To help it. And again, I think when we talked before, on a couple of our other lives, that we talked about, it starts at home,
Mhm.
and it starts at home and training up what our daughters should expect, what
That
worth, what is their worth. Even our young men, of course, our young men as well, what their worth is, and what not to do and what not to accept. And I think you just got to continue to hammer home on that.
yes. Another point of domestic violence that I don't think people talk about much is that I think there's also what you call dual domestic violence where the couples are fighting. So one might not consider them being abused
Yeah,
because they're being abusive as well,
yeah, they both fighting each other.
fighting. And that is also domestic violence, and uh,
Both of them are guilty of it.
both are guilty, and they both need help to resolve that, because that's, to me, where violence is always an extension of self-control. When you feel like you don't have control over something,
That's
you
right.
always lash out in violence. It's like violence is your go-to method to establish control,
Right.
and that is not a natural way of being in a world. But of course, with what the system that we're under, that's what it seems like. But it is
Yolanda, Yolanda said in the comments, it's never too late to start the healing journey.
right,
Never too late. Exactly right. You have to start somewhere. It's never too late.
never too late. And that's where I think that we have to, as humans, hold each other accountable. So if your boy is beating up on his girl, that's your boy, you're supposed to step to him. And if I know my girl is beating up on her boy, I'm supposed to step to her and be like, no, what you doing? You know that ain't right.
It ain't right.
Yeah, right. And help them where they need help, because some people really just need help. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So they go to the first thing that they could and that is violence. So, and we live in a very violent world. We allow our children to view violent stuff. I mean, I can't say this enough. I probably say it almost every time I come on the live or anytime I'm talking, is that we have to be very careful of what we allow our children to ingest by way of media. Just because it's on television, just because it's in a song or on social media or in a video game, does not mean it's something that we should be ingesting. So I think that we have to be very careful to guard our hearts and minds. Don't don't look at that stuff. I know for sure that what you pay attention to grows. That is just a universal law of the cosmos. And they talk about the law of attraction and all, whatever you want to call it that. But do know that whatever you focus your attention on grows.
Yep.
Focus your attention on watching violence. Somewhere in your life, violence have to show up. So that's why we have to be careful. Don't turn it off. Don't watch it.
That's right.
I don't watch it. I'm can't all that violent TV. Just for violence sake.
That's right.
I blame half of what we going through on this country. In this country, as far as violence. Don't laugh, but that game, what's that Grand
Theft Auto?
Theft Auto. I hate it every time I hate it. Kids love that mess. They love it.
Yeah, and they have little young kids playing that. And I know it's an age restriction, right? I mean, you're supposed to be a certain age, right?
I think it's 18, but
I don't think.
I called my son and them watching it years ago when they was in high school, and I told him, "Don't bring that shit in this house no more." I mean, it's good friends, and they were good boys, of course. Come from good families, but I don't know if the families knew what was on that game.
That's right.
But when I saw it, I was like, don't bring that shit here no more. But imagine kids whose parents are not watching them and they are ingesting this, because them kids be in that game for hours. So your people don't realize that whatever it is you feed your subconscious, it has to play out in your life some way, somehow. Otherwise, you believe that you're crazy. Yeah, because we're gonna have cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, I believe that.
Get away from all of that violence and all of that stuff that's just
negative.
Negative.
All that negative energy and everything else that is out there. It's definitely gonna play a part in your life.
Quotes from our beautiful guest.
Yeah, Lance said he jumped on late, but great job with the topics. We really didn't have too many tonight, so we didn't have so many comments in the chat, but that's okay. Hopefully someone will watch it and it'll help one. That's all we want.
That's it. We want just to help one, even if they just happen to catch the numbers scrolling on the bottom.
That's right. It's all good. It's all good.
Alien stuff.
Thank you guys for coming through.
Brother.
We appreciate you.
Yes, we do. But don't forget, we apologize because we have been off for a couple of weeks. I was sick 1 week and still my voice is still kind of sketchy, and I moved 1 week, and this week Michelle is attending the funeral of her sister-in-law, so we give her traveling graces. We pray for traveling graces and that the family be comforted. And so life is lifing, as they say. So we have to roll with the punches, but in the future we hope to just advertise a little bit better. And we just remind you to please tell a friend to tell a friend when you come on. Make sure they're coming on with you. Yeah. But, you wanted to say something?
No, They're just all saying it was a joy to come with us. They love us.
And we love you back. And
Yes.
again, if you know somebody who is experiencing domestic violence, please have them to reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And that number is 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233. And remember, again, we'll be here on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock when we can. We're going to do as much as in the way of advertising
As we can.
when we can. And we thank you so much for hanging out with me and Dee. We miss Michelle.
We miss her, but we held it down until next time, right?
We sure did. And look, we got our hour in, so you can't tell me that two women who putting their heads together can't talk about something, right?
We sure can. Thank you all so very much for joining us. We really appreciate you and we love you. And have a blessed week.
Yes.
Peace.
I can't do my fingers, so bye.
We'll do it for.
Okay. Bye, everybody.